if you really think about where Putin is truly missing today, it's definitely somewhere near Toretsk in a bloody assault. With his mug, his bold spot, and his little jokes, he would fit perfectly into that gray, corpse-strewn landscape. And by the way, his end could have been both picturesque and fitting, because, the kings of the past, even after political disgrace, still managed to find a way to die in battle. You can recall Harold II Godwinson, Uesugi from Echigo, Harold Hardrada, or finally Richard III at Bosworth Field. Of course, naturally, Putin should not demonstrate what might actually await him in the trenches. The thing is, all this talk about heroism, about bravery, about defense, it's all, of course, complete nonsense. Because you see, veterans of past wars, veterans of previous conflicts were extraordinarily lucky. When they returned, they told me all this nonsense about fires, conflagrations, about friends, comrades. I remember the infantry and my native company there. They could tell these tall tales endlessly. All those veteran recollections of war always suspiciously reeked of something cinematic and cliched. But the public swallowed any lie anyway. The young pioneers banged on their drums and the women teared up. Well, all that was expected of the hero was to jingle his medals and grimly carry a mysterious PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in his heart. But then the scoundrel internet came along and exposed all these heroes for what they really were. Take a look on my Telegram channel. They're vile, they're horrifying, they're monstrous, by the way, bloodless, and without any spilled guts. There's nothing like that there. It simply shows the ways of abuse in the Russian army, abuse against their own comrades. Well, you've already seen a lot. You've seen fights in pits. You've seen people dragged behind cars by their neckties. You've seen people chained to trees, endless beatings. But here, believe me, you'll see something new. And it becomes clear there are tons of such videos. I just understand can't always post everything on my Telegram channel. Not because it's forbidden or someone is banning it, but simply because a subscriber might snap and get tired of seeing all this. Just like how we temporarily stopped showing all those cop scenes because, well, everyone got sick of them. But it's clear that a trench orc is, above all, of course, a cowardly, pathetic, and repeatedly humiliated creature. And this creature doesn't go through some kind of school of courage at war, but rather an utterly brutal school of beatings, and just as brutal a school of fear and humiliation. And there's an unpleasant little secret about war, one that would be better never to learn, because all wars are more or less the same. This little secret of war is that it doesn't produce heroes, but bastards. And it's no coincidence that these bastards, once they return, vent their rage on those who can't fight back. We all know how many and what kinds of crimes the special military operation veterans have committed while on leave, during vacations, or after coming back. Well, yes, these special military operation veterans, of course, they show off on TV or attend school assemblies where they talk with a serious face about brotherhood, camaraderie, and heroic deeds. But they will never willingly tell how their own company pissed in their mouths, how they were raped in the trench mud, and how they were driven into meat grinder assaults. And that is exactly the dark side for 90% of the SVO orcs. And here's something else I'll tell you. The most unpleasant thing is that the orcs at the front learn one important secret. It's not about some mythical, delusional PTSD. Someday, if you're interested, I'll explain the mythological nature of this PTSD. The thing is, they really do learn one very important secret. They find out just how cheap human life really is. They learn that in general, life is worth nothing. And that's exactly the kind of thing that drunken cattle absolutely should never know. In the civilized world, this cheapness of life is masked by codes, courts, the threat of prison, interrogations, investigations. But at the front, none of that exists. At the front, everything becomes clear. And getting used to this pennyworth life, watching his drinking buddies who no longer even chase down maggots, the orc learns this unpleasant truth that life is worth nothing. And being a creature with just one brain wrinkle, he puts his newfound knowledge into practice on those who have neither chimas, nor rifles, nor, let's say, any way to defend themselves. In other words, on defenseless women, on children, on all sorts of real-line livestock. And by the way, I'd advise sensitive viewers not to watch it. I posted the video for those who today in Russia are scratching their heads and thinking about signing what they call a contract. Of course, any reasonable orc goes to the front expecting that his organs will be quickly and relatively painlessly hung up on some aspen tree and aspen in an unnamed forest belt. Yes, but there's also another far less optimistic scenario that is ending up in the hands of field surgeons. One of today's posts on my Telegram channel is dedicated to this topic. Take a look, it won't hurt. And it becomes clear that field surgery is something about 18 times scarier than death itself. And here it's important to understand that the medics who end up in the trenches are those who didn't even have enough qualifications to give enemas to generals in a comfortable hospital in Rostov or to remove splinters from deputies. These wizards of the scalpel are actually, quite remarkably, capable of giving even a broken stool peritonitis or sepsis. And any attempt to disinfect a wound usually results in introducing infections into the wounded person's body that are completely unknown to science. But don't think that everything is always so hopeless, mysterious, enigmatic, and unknown. This hacking away at torn stumps and removing shattered bones from wounds will almost certainly lead to good old osteomyelitis, that is, an infection ascending through the bone marrow.